Daniel had always believed his life followed a simple path. He worked, paid his bills on time, helped his mother when she needed it, and stayed out of trouble. Nothing dramatic ever happened to him, and that was exactly how he liked it. He was the kind of man people described as steady or quiet. He did not chase excitement, and excitement rarely chased him. On that evening, Daniel did not expect anything different. He had been invited to a small indoor gathering held in a rented conference room at the edge of the city. The event was connected to a cultural research project he had helped with months earlier. Daniel worked as a data assistant, helping organize interviews, records, and background information. It was not a glamorous job, but it paid well enough and suited his calm personality. The invitation surprised him. He almost declined, but the organizer insisted it would be polite to attend. Daniel put on his cleanest shirt, combed his hair carefully, and arrived right on time, as he always did. The room was modest, but well prepared. Soft lights hung from the ceiling, and a long table was set with simple food and drinks. About 15 people stood around in small groups, talking quietly. Most of them were professionals, researchers, translators, and cultural experts. Daniel recognized a few familiar faces and nodded politely as he entered. He stayed near the side of the room at first, holding a glass of water, listening more than speaking. That was his habit. He liked observing people, noticing how they behaved when they thought no one was paying attention. That was when he noticed her. She stood near the window, slightly apart from the others. She wore plain clothes, nothing flashy, but there was something about her presence that made people glance in her direction without realizing why. Her posture was relaxed, yet confident. When she smiled, it was calm and controlled, not wide or loud. Someone nearby whispered, "That's the Fox Woman." Daniel frowned slightly. He was not sure if that was her real name or a nickname. He did not ask. From the tone of the whisper, it sounded more like a label than a joke. As the evening went on, Daniel found himself pulled into a small conversation group that included her. She listened carefully as others spoke, rarely interrupting. When she did speak, her words were clear and thoughtful. She asked questions that made people pause and think. Daniel spoke very little, but when he did, she looked directly at him. Not in a rude way, and not in a friendly way either. It felt more like she was studying him, as if he were a page in a book she had already read once before. That made him uncomfortable. He tried to avoid her eyes, focusing instead on the table or his glass. Still, he could feel her attention. It was not heavy or aggressive, but it was steady, like a quiet weight. Later, when the group shifted and people moved around, Daniel found himself standing alone near the refreshment table. He relaxed slightly, thinking the moment had passed. Then she walked over. "Daniel," she said calmly. He looked up, surprised that she knew his name. "Yes." She smiled gently. "We haven't been properly introduced." She extended her hand. Her grip was light but confident. "I'm Lynn," she said. "Nice to meet you," Daniel replied. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room noise seemed to fade slightly, or maybe that was just Daniel's imagination. Lynn looked at him with a thoughtful expression, as if deciding whether to say something important. "You're very quiet," she said. Daniel shrugged. "I listen more than I talk." "That's usually where the truth hides," she replied. The comment stayed with him. He wasn't sure why. They spoke for a few minutes about simple things: the project, the event, the long hours everyone had worked. Lynn mentioned she specialized in analyzing patterns in human behavior. Daniel nodded politely, not fully understanding what that meant. At one point she laughed softly at something someone said across the room. Her laugh was brief, controlled, and then gone. That was when Daniel understood why people called her the Fox Woman. There was a cleverness in her eyes, a sense that she noticed details others missed. As the evening continued, Daniel felt an odd sense of tension he couldn't explain. Nothing bad happened. No arguments, no loud moments, no surprises. Yet he felt as if he were standing at the edge of something unseen. Before the gathering ended, the organizer thanked everyone for coming. People began collecting their things, exchanging polite goodbyes. Daniel was about to leave when Lynn spoke again. "Daniel," she said quietly. It turned. "Life doesn't always move in straight lines," she said. Sometimes it circles back in ways we don't expect. Gave a polite smile, unsure how to respond. I suppose that's true. She smiled back, but this time her expression held something deeper, something unreadable. Be careful on your way home, she said. Daniel nodded and left the room. Outside, the night air felt cooler than he expected. He walked to his car, replaying the evening in his mind. The conversations, the looks, the strange feeling that lingered in his chest. Nothing unusual had happened, he told himself. He was just tired. But as he drove home, he could not shake the feeling that the ordinary shape of his life had shifted slightly. Not enough to notice right away, but enough to matter. He did not know it yet, but that quiet evening, the calm lights, the soft voices, the woman with the steady smile, was the beginning of a story he would never forget, and the words that would soon silence a room had not yet been spoken. 2 days after the gathering, he received a short message from the event organizer. There was a follow-up meeting, they said. Some final paperwork needed signatures, and a few participants had been asked to attend in person. Daniel almost ignored it. His week was busy, and he did not like unnecessary meetings, but the message sounded formal, and he did not want to appear careless. So, once again, he found himself walking into a quiet meeting room in the late afternoon. The chairs were placed in a loose circle, and the lights were brighter. Only a handful of people were present. Daniel recognized 2 researchers, a translator, and 1 assistant taking notes. Then he saw Lynn. She was already seated, hands folded calmly on her lap. When she noticed him, she gave a small nod, nothing more. No smile this time. Daniel sat down across from her, feeling a strange tightness in his chest. He told himself it was nothing, just nerves. The meeting began in an ordinary way. Dates were confirmed. People spoke in careful, professional tones. Daniel listened, signed where he was told, and waited for it to end. As the meeting slowed, the organizer checked his notes. Before we close, he said, does anyone have anything else to add? For a moment, no one spoke. Then Lynn raised her hand slightly. I do, she said. Everyone turned toward her. She stood slowly, her movements controlled and calm. Her eyes moved around the room before finally settling on Daniel. Daniel, she said. He looked up, surprised again by how directly she addressed him. Yes, there was a pause. A long one. Lynn smiled. It was the same calm smile she had worn before, but now it carried a weight that made the air feel heavier. Human, she said softly, you're about to be a father. The words were clear. Too clear. For a moment, no one reacted. It was as if the sentence did not belong in the room, as if everyone was waiting for someone to laugh or explain. No one did. The silence that followed felt deep and uncomfortable. Chairs did not move. Papers did not rustle. Even breathing sounded loud. Daniel felt the blood rush to his ears. What? He asked. Lynn did not repeat herself. She simply looked at him, still calm, still certain. One of the researchers cleared his throat. Is this a joke? He asked carefully. Lynn turned her head slightly. No. Daniel stood up without realizing it. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. That's not possible, he said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. You must be mistaken. Lynn did not argue. She did not raise her voice or try to convince anyone. She simply said, I'm not. The organizer looked uneasy. Lynn, this isn't appropriate for a professional setting. I understand, she replied. But truth does not change based on location. Daniel felt heat rise to his face. Every pair of eyes in the room was on him now. He felt exposed, confused, and suddenly angry. This is not funny, he said. You don't know anything about my life? Lynn met his gaze. I know enough. The assistant stopped writing. The translator shifted uncomfortably. Daniel wanted to say more. He wanted to demand an explanation, but no words came. His thoughts were tangled, racing in circles. I think we should take a break, the organizer said quickly. Chairs moved. People stood. Quiet conversations began in corners of the room, full of whispers and uncertain glances. Daniel remained standing, frozen. Lynn walked past him slowly. "Daniel," she said in a low voice, meant only for him. "You don't have to believe me today." He turned sharply. "Then why say it?" She paused. "Because silence can be crueler than shock." Then she walked away. Daniel left the building shortly after. He did not say goodbye. He did not wait for instructions. He stepped into the street, his mind spinning. The world outside moved normally. Cars passed. People talked on their phones. Someone laughed nearby. Everything continued as if nothing had happened. He drove home in a blur. He did not remember stopping at traffic lights. His hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly. At home, he sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall. "This is impossible," he said aloud. He replayed the moment again and again. Her voice, the words, the silence that followed. He thought about his past. Carefully, slowly. He had always lived cautiously. He avoided careless choices. He believed he knew his own life well. There was nothing. Nothing that matched her claim. That night, he barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the room, the faces, the calm smile. The next day, messages began arriving. A colleague asked if he was okay. Another joked awkwardly, asking if congratulations were in order. Daniel did not respond. At work, he struggled to focus. Numbers blurred. Words lost meaning. He caught himself staring at nothing, his thoughts drifting back to that single sentence. By evening, doubt began to creep in. Not belief, just doubt. The uncomfortable kind that asks questions you don't want to answer. He wondered. Lynn did not seem reckless. She did not seem cruel. She had not laughed or tried to embarrass him. She had simply stated it as if reading a fact from a page. That bothered him more than anything. Daniel searched for her online but found little. No social media. No interviews. Only brief mentions in academic circles, always described as private and reserved. Days passed and the silence grew heavier. At the end of the week, Daniel returned to the same building to submit final documents. The hallway felt longer this time. His steps echoed too loudly. As he turned a corner, he saw Lynn standing by a window. She looked out at the city, hands clasped behind her back. She did not turn when he approached. "You shouldn't say things like that," Daniel said quietly. "I didn't say it lightly," she replied. He swallowed. "You didn't explain, 'cause you weren't ready to listen," she said. He stood beside her now, looking out at the street below. "And now?" She turned her head slightly. "Now the seed of truth has been planted. Whether it grows is not my choice." Daniel shook his head. "You're wrong." She finally looked at him fully. Her eyes were steady, not kind, not cruel. "Time will answer you," she said. Then she walked away, leaving Daniel standing alone again, surrounded by questions with no clear shape. He did not know it yet, but the silence that followed her words was not empty. It was waiting. After Lynn walked away that day, Daniel felt as if a door had closed behind her, locking him inside his own thoughts. Life continued, but for him, every hour felt heavier than the last. The words she had spoken stayed with him, repeating in his mind at the most unexpected moments. At first, Daniel tried to ignore everything. He told himself it was nonsense, a strange misunderstanding, or a badly timed statement meant to test reactions. He woke up early, went to work, ate his meals on time, and returned home in the evening. He cleaned his apartment more than usual, as if order could calm his thoughts. But the silence inside him grew louder. At work, he caught people looking at him differently. Some avoided eye contact. Others smiled awkwardly, as if unsure what to say. No one asked directly, but the air around him felt charged with unspoken curiosity. One afternoon, a coworker finally spoke up. "You okay?" she asked gently while they waited for the elevator. Daniel forced a small smile. "I'm fine." She nodded, but her eyes showed doubt. "If you need time off, you should take it." He thanked her and stepped into the elevator, feeling exposed again. He had not asked for this attention. He had not shared any personal details. Yet a single sentence had changed how people saw him. At home that night, Daniel sat at his desk and opened an old notebook. It was where he kept important dates and reminders. Slowly, carefully, he began writing down moments from his past. Not memories filled with emotion, but plain facts. Dates, places, people he had known. He told himself he was only doing this to prove Lynn wrong. Still, as he wrote, his hands trembled slightly. He went back years, listing jobs, moves, short friendships that faded with time. He examined each detail with a level of attention he had never used before. He asked himself questions he had never needed to ask. Did I forget something? Did I misunderstand something? Is there a detail I ignored? The answers were always the same. No, no, no. Yet the doubt did not leave. Days passed. Daniel stopped sleeping well. He woke up in the middle of the night, his heart racing, his mind filled with half-formed worries. Sometimes he dreamed of standing in that meeting room again, the silence stretching endlessly. He tried reaching out to Lynn once more. He sent a polite email through the project's contact list, asking for clarification. The message was short, respectful, and calm. He received no reply. That made things worse. If she had been joking, she could have admitted it. If she had been mistaken, she could have apologized. But the silence felt deliberate, as if she was waiting for something to happen. Daniel began to research on his own. Not out of belief, but out of a need to regain control. He read articles about data prediction, behavioral analysis, and confidential research methods. He tried to understand how someone could claim knowledge about another person's future with such confidence. Most explanations felt weak. None fully explained Lynn's calm certainty. One evening, while sorting through old documents, Daniel found a medical record from years ago. It was routine, nothing alarming. He almost put it aside, but something made him read it again. A small remark about follow-up information that was never requested. His chest tightened. This means nothing, he whispered to himself. Still, he placed the document on his desk, separate from the others. The next day, he called a clinic and scheduled a general checkup. He told himself it was for peace of mind. Nothing more. While waiting for the appointment, Daniel's thoughts wandered constantly. He imagined every possible outcome, most of them ending with relief. But there was always one path he tried not to think about, one possibility that made his stomach twist. At the clinic, he sat quietly, filling out forms. The questions felt unusually personal, even though they were standard. When the nurse called his name, his legs felt heavy as he stood. The examination was simple. The doctor spoke calmly, professionally. No hints, no surprises. You'll get the results in a few days, the doctor said. Daniel nodded and left, feeling both hopeful and afraid. Those days felt endless. Every phone vibration made his heart jump. He checked his email more often than usual. He avoided conversations, afraid someone might ask a question he wasn't ready to answer. During this time, Daniel noticed small changes in himself. He became more cautious, more thoughtful. He began reflecting on responsibility, on choices, on how easily a life could change without warning. He thought about his parents, about the sacrifices they had made. He wondered what kind of person he truly was when faced with the unexpected. The test results arrived on a quiet morning. Daniel stared at the email for several minutes before opening it. His fingers felt stiff. When he finally read the message, his breath caught in his throat. The results were not clear. Not a confirmation. Not a denial. Daniel leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. So it's not nothing, he said quietly. Fear crept in then, real and sharp. Not fear of judgment, but fear of responsibility. Fear of the unknown. He remembered Lynn's words, "You don't have to believe me today." A part of him had already started to believe her, not because he wanted to, but because reality was slowly removing his certainty. That afternoon, Daniel walked through the city without direction. He watched families passing by, parents guiding children across streets. For the first time, he wondered what it would mean to be responsible for someone else in a way he had never imagined. That evening, his phone rang. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Daniel, Lin's voice said calmly. His heart skipped. Why now? He asked. Because doubt has reached its peak, she replied, and fear has begun. He swallowed. You knew this would happen, she said. But knowing does not make it easier. There was a pause. I never wanted to hurt you, Lin continued. Only to prepare you. Daniel closed his eyes. Prepare me for what? For truth, she said simply. The call ended. Daniel sat in silence, the phone still in his hand. Outside, the city lights flickered on as evening arrived. He no longer felt angry. He felt aware. The doubt that once haunted him had changed into something else, quiet understanding, that his life was moving forward whether he was ready or not. In the investigation he began to prove someone wrong had led him to a truth he could no longer avoid. Daniel did not sleep that night. After Lin's call, his mind refused to rest. He lay on his bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of the city outside his window. Cars passed in the distance. Somewhere a dog barked once, and then went quiet. The world felt calm, almost gentle, while his thoughts were anything but. For the first time since this all began, Daniel stopped fighting the idea completely. He was still afraid, still unsure, but denial no longer gave him comfort. Questions now mattered more than arguments. In the early morning, as light slowly entered the room, Daniel made a decision. He needed answers, not rumors, not guesses, and not half-truths. Real answers. He got out of bed, made a simple breakfast, and tried to move with purpose. His hands no longer shook, but his chest felt tight, as if something heavy was resting there. Later that day, he returned to the clinic for further evaluation. This time, the waiting room felt different. He noticed the small details, the soft ticking clock, the calm voices, careful movements of people who worked there every day. The doctor was kind but direct. We need to be thorough, the doctor said. Some things take time to confirm. Oh. Daniel nodded. I understand. More tests followed. More forms. More quiet waiting. Days turned into a week. During that time, Daniel informed his workplace that he needed personal leave. No explanations. Just honesty without details. They agreed without pressing him. At home, Daniel spent long hours thinking about responsibility. He thought about what it meant to step forward instead of stepping away. He thought about how life could ask something of a person without warning, and how the real test was not preparation, but response. When the clinic finally called him back, Daniel went alone. The doctor spoke carefully, choosing words that were clear but gentle. The results were now complete. The situation was no longer uncertain. The truth stood quietly between them. Daniel listened without interrupting. His face remained calm, but inside, something shifted. Fear did not disappear, but it changed shape. It became serious, grounded, real. When he left the clinic, he stood outside for a long time. The sky was bright, almost painfully blue. People walked past him, unaware that his world had just changed forever. So it's true, he whispered. He did not feel shock anymore. He felt weight. That evening, Daniel received another message from Lin. This time, it was not a call. Meet me tomorrow. Same place. You deserve clarity. Daniel stared at the message for a long time before replying. Okay, the next afternoon, they met in a quiet public space near the research building. Sunlight filtered through tall windows and the air felt still. Lin was already there, seated at a small table, hands folded as always. When she saw Daniel, she stood. You look different, she said. So do you, Daniel replied. They sat. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Daniel broke the silence. You knew? Yes? How? Lin took a breath. I work with data most people never see. Long-term studies. Medical trends. Records that don't shout, but whisper. Daniel listened closely. I did not guess, she continued. I observed. I connected patterns others ignore. When I saw your profile, it stood out. You could have told me privately, Daniel said, his voice calm but firm. Lynn nodded. I considered that. But sometimes a truth must arrive with impact. Otherwise, people run from it. Daniel looked down at the table. You turned my life upside down. And I'm sorry for the pain, but I do not regret telling you. Why? Because responsibility delayed can become regret, Lynn replied. Daniel let her words sink in. There is something else you should know, she added. He looked up. The situation you're facing was not created by carelessness, she said. It was shaped by time, silence, and missing information. You were never irresponsible. It mattered more than Daniel expected. He felt a quiet release inside him, like a knot loosening. So what now? He asked. That is your choice, Lynn said. My role ends with truth. Daniel studied her face. For the first time, he did not see mystery. He saw clarity. I don't hate you, he said slowly. But I wish you had trusted me with honesty instead of shock. Lynn nodded again. That is fair. They stood. Will you disappear now? Daniel asked. A faint smile touched her lips. I was never meant to stay. She turned and walked away, her figure blending into the movement of people around her. Daniel did not follow. Over the next few weeks, Daniel focused on preparing himself not with panic, but with intention. He learned. He asked questions. He planned carefully. Some days were harder than others. Doubt returned often, but it no longer controlled him. He spoke with his family. The conversation was quiet, emotional, and honest. There were moments of silence, moments of worry, but also moments of support. You're not alone, his mother said firmly. You never were. Those words stayed with him. Daniel adjusted his work schedule. He reorganized his life not around fear, but around responsibility. The future still felt uncertain, but no longer empty. One afternoon, while sorting through old messages, Daniel came across Lynn's first email again. He read it carefully this time. It was never cruel, never careless, just honest in a way that demanded courage. Daniel closed his laptop and sat quietly. The room that once went silent when truth was spoken was no longer part of his fear. Silence, he realized, was not punishment. It was space, space to choose. And Daniel chose to move forward not because he was forced to. The truth had been revealed. Now came the living of it. It was not sudden or dramatic. There were no loud announcements or big moments that felt like a final answer. Instead, everything changed quietly, one decision at a time. Each morning, Daniel woke up earlier than before. He sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the city come alive. He used those moments to think clearly, without fear pushing his thoughts in every direction. He reminded himself that running away would not erase reality, but facing it could shape something meaningful. He began to prepare in practical ways. He learned what he needed to know, step by step, without rushing. He read, listened, and asked questions from people he trusted. Some conversations were uncomfortable, but Daniel no longer avoided them. Avoidance, he realized, was just another form of fear. There were days when doubt returned strongly. On those days, he felt overwhelmed by the size of responsibility ahead of him. He wondered if he was strong enough, patient enough, wise enough. But instead of letting those thoughts control him, he acknowledged them and let them pass. I don't need to be perfect, he told himself. I need to be present. Slowly, that idea became his anchor. At work, Daniel returned with a new sense of focus. His colleagues noticed the change. He spoke a little more, listened more deeply, and handled challenges with calm determination. People stopped looking at him with curiosity and started seeing him as steady again, perhaps even stronger than before. Children were playing, their laughter filling the air. Parents watched nearby, some tired, some smiling, all attentive in their own ways. Daniel stopped for a moment, and observed. He did not feel fear then. He felt clarity. Weeks turned into months. Time did what it always does. It moved forward, steady and unstoppable. With time came acceptance. Not forced acceptance, but honest understanding. Daniel thought about Lynn sometimes, but without anger. He understood her role now. She was not meant to stay in his story. She was a messenger, nothing more. The truth had passed through her, and then she had stepped aside. One afternoon, Daniel received a final message from an unknown sender. "I see you are doing well. That matters." There was no name attached. Daniel read it once, then deleted it. He did not feel the need to reply. He had moved beyond needing explanations. As the future slowly became the present, Daniel learned the value of silence. Not the painful silence of shock, but the peaceful silence that allows reflection. Silence had once filled a room when words changed everything. Now silence became the space where he found his strength. His family stood by him. Their support was not loud or dramatic, but consistent. That consistency mattered more than anything else. "You're handling this with grace," his mother told him one evening. Daniel smiled. "I'm just doing what needs to be done." That became his truth. There were moments when fear still whispered. It spoke late at night, when the world was quiet. Daniel listened to it without obeying it. He understood something important then. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward anyway. As the final days of waiting came to an end, Daniel felt ready. Not because he knew everything, but because he had learned how to face the unknown without losing himself. The day arrived quietly. There was no dramatic build-up, no loud announcement. Just a moment that marked the beginning of something new. Daniel stood still, breathing slowly, feeling the weight and meaning of that moment settle into him. This was not an ending. It was a beginning. Later, as he sat alone in his apartment, Daniel reflected on how far he had come. He thought back to that first evening, the light, the quiet voices, the calm smile that started it all. He remembered the silence that followed a sentence he never expected to hear. That silence had once felt like judgment. Now, he understood it differently. The room went silent because truth demands attention. Truth does not shout. It waits. Daniel had listened. He had grown. And now his life moved forward with purpose. Not because someone predicted it. Not because someone forced it. But because when the moment came, he chose responsibility over fear, calm over chaos, and action over denial. The story that began with a shocking sentence ended not with noise, but with quiet strength. And in that quiet, Daniel found himself ready for whatever came next.